it's not out of my hands in some ways. It's up to my representatives and obviously the people upstairs.
Extensions to Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell, and now Jared Goff.
Lions are signing quarterback Jared Goff to a 4-year, $212 million contract.
Prior to this moment, there were a lot of questions about where the state of the quarterback market truly was. Some people were speculating that we finally hit a ceiling and no one was really going to beat Joe Burrow's contract. And while this may be true, someone just became the second highest paid quarterback in the NFL currently. And the reason why this is so significant is this completely changes everything for other quarterbacks that are looking to get paid. I wanted to say that whoever gets this amount of money certainly deserves it. I am happy for you securing generational wealth for yourself once again, but the cause and effect of this is going to be so entertaining to watch, and that's what we're here to discuss today. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we get all that out of the way, work! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The Detroit Lions had a lot of questions entering this year's offseason. They had franchise cornerstones like Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jared Goff that were all eligible for contract extensions. One of the problems with drafting so well, especially in the latter part of the NFL draft, is once it's time to pay those players, you have some very tough decisions to make. In the case of the Detroit Lions, they didn't really make it that difficult on themselves. At the time that we made our last video on the Lions were negotiating a contract extension with Amon-Ra St. Brown that could pay him about $26 to $28 million a year. And then they shattered that number, making Amon-Ra St. Brown the highest paid wide receiver in NFL history for about a day until A.J. Brown came and completely shattered that record. At the same time, there was a huge question of what they were going to do with Penei Sewell, without a doubt the league's best right tackle. And ultimately, they decided to sign him to a 4-year, $112 million contract extension as well. Immediately, all eyes turned to Jared Goff. What were the Detroit Lions going to do? Jared Goff had one of the most unique careers I've ever seen in NFL history. In the pre-draft process, people were calling him the next coming of Tom Brady. They thought that Jared Goff possessed a lot of the similar traits of Joe Montana. And to be honest, I didn't think those comparisons were too far off. Jared Goff was perceived as a safe pocket passer who could throw with pinpoint precision and accuracy. And so far, he was just that. In his first season in the NFL, he struggled mightily, but in his first season in the NFL, he also had Jeff Fisher as a head coach. The Rams would then get him Sean McVay, and Sean McVay would devise a quarterback-friendly offense around Todd Gurley, and really the rest was history. For the next 2 years, Jared Goff experienced the most success of his entire career. And then Todd Gurley's knee would blow out. This taught Sean McVay a very important lesson. Building an offense around a running back was probably the most volatile thing you could do in football, especially in today's NFL, especially if you're not utilizing a fullback. So in 2019, he decided to create an offense around Cooper Kupp. And in 2020, he realized that Jared Goff might not be the right quarterback to run that offense, even benching him for John Wolford towards the latter part of his career. Jared Goff would then get traded in the most even trade in NFL history. Goff would be traded along with 2 first-round picks and a 3rd-round pick in order to receive Matthew Stafford. And the theory was that Jared Goff was just going to be a bridge quarterback until the Lions found a quarterback prospect that they liked. But the problem was Jared Goff was actually fairly solid once given a decent supporting cast. The Lions were on fire during the NFL draft, constantly drafting hit after hit after hit. Next thing you know, Jared Goff is back to throwing for over 4,400 passing yards in 2022 and being named to a Pro Bowl before leading the Detroit Lions all the way to the NFC Championship and pretty damn close to winning it during this past year. In one of his best seasons to date, Jared Goff threw for over 4,500 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. Surprisingly, he wasn't named to a Pro Bowl. There's a huge question of what the Lions saw in Jared Goff at this point. Is he still just your bridge quarterback? But what kind of bridge quarterback throws for over 4,500 passing yards? Is he gonna be the guy for the future? Could this guy get you to a Super Bowl? Well, Jared Goff himself seemed fairly unsure at the end of the season.
Regards to my future, it's not up to me. I love this place, and we'll see what happens as time goes on here. But yeah, I love this place and love Dan, love all the coaches, love all my teammates, and it's not out of my hands in some ways. It's up to my representatives and obviously the people upstairs. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I think I've loved every second of my time here and would love more. And again, I can echo what I just said. I love Dan. I love the coaches. I love the players here and my teammates. And yeah, it would be great. But it's not up to me.
It seems like a few months later, we officially have the answer. According to Adam Schefter, another done deal in Detroit. Lions are signing QB Jared Goff to a 4-year, $212 million contract extension that includes $170 million guaranteed. Goff now goes from former #1 overall pick to the highest paid Lion in franchise history. This is a very interesting contract because Jared Goff was the first QB that was up for a contract extension that could have been paid anywhere from the range of $40 million all the way to the amount that he got paid now. And based off of how he handled this negotiation, you're going to see multiple other QBs get affected by this. It's very difficult to say if this is a good contract or a bad contract because at face value, every time a quarterback gets paid, it looks like an overpay. But that's just how it looks. I know the salary cap consistently is elevating more and more, but anytime a quarterback becomes the highest paid QB or the second highest paid QB in the NFL, obviously it's gonna look like an overpay. So you can't just look at how much Jared Goff is getting paid. Rather, you need to look at when other QBs need to get paid. For example, the Philadelphia Eagles extended Jalen Hurts last year, signing him to a 5-year, $255 million contract extension. The Chiefs restructured Patrick Mahomes' deal, and currently as it stands, the highest paid QB in the NFL is Joe Burrow, followed by Jared Goff, then Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, and Jalen Hurts, who was getting paid $51 million last year, is now in 5th place. A lot of this has to do with the timing of the contract and who's up to get a contract extension. And in this case, the players that are probably the most likely to get extended in this order are Tua Tagovailoa, Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, and of course, Dak Prescott. So let's start with Dak Prescott. One of the biggest storylines of the entire Cowboys offseason was what they were going to do with Dak Prescott. They initially even threatened to move on from Dak Prescott about a month ago, but at the end of the day, fact of the matter is that the Cowboys don't have any leverage in a Dak Prescott contract extension because for some reason they thought it was a good idea to backload Dak Prescott's contract extension, and at a specific point, you have to pay off your debt. And Adam Schefter explained this perfectly earlier in the offseason.
The stakes on the poker game between the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott just got higher because once he does sign that, and that tag will be signed by Monday, then the Dallas Cowboys owe him the $31.4 million for this season. And if they can't get a long-term deal done by July 15th and they have to franchise him again, guess what that number is going to be? 37.7. And if they can't get a deal done after that, the next year, it's 144% of the salary from the previous year, $54.4 million. So to me, he's got long-term leverage because the Dallas Cowboys can't afford to lose Dak Prescott.
Now, it's important to mention that Dak Prescott doesn't necessarily want to be the highest paid QB in the NFL, but that could just mean beating Jared Goff's contract. Thanks to Jared Goff, the bar is now set at $53 million annually for a deal that doesn't top the market. So you can expect Dak Prescott to go for a $53.5 million contract. And the reason why the Cowboys would extend Dak is at least they would be able to lower Prescott's 2024 cap hit, and this would give the Cowboys flexibility to extend players like Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb. But for some reason, the Cowboys don't really care about this. Historically, they like to wait and see how much other QBs are getting paid so Dak Prescott could get the most money possible. I don't know why they do this, but they do it, and it drives me absolutely insane. So expect Dak to get paid the most out of anyone on this list, primarily because my favorite team has the most incompetent front office in all of sports, and I've come to terms with that. What about Jordan Love? Historically, I've said Jordan Love is in the greatest position out of any quarterback in the 2020 NFL draft. And I've even said this about Michael Penix. Even though I thought it was boneheaded to draft your succession QB with the 8th overall pick in the NFL draft, despite him being 24 years old and 27 when he'd probably start, in both Michael Penix's situation and Jordan Love's situation, they get to sit down and watch a quarterback prepare for the rigors of the NFL and get paid a lot of money for doing so. And that was the case case with Jordan Love. By the time Jordan Love was able to finally start for the Green Bay Packers, he was on the final year of his rookie scale contract. And the Green Bay Packers gave him a 1-year contract extension worth up to $22.5 million before he even started for the Packers. So they are covered for this season, but after this season, Jordan Love's contract expires. So you don't really get to take advantage of a rookie scale contract, but there's no question in my mind. The time Jordan Love spent studying Aaron Rodgers was so valuable and was the difference between him being a very promising QB or another quarterback that ended up busting. But now that Jordan Love is being given a contract extension, the Green Bay Packers would be heavily incentivized to get it done as soon as possible. Historically, they've shown that they'd be willing to do that. If they do it quick enough, you might see Jordan Love get paid somewhere around the $50 million mark. In this case, Jordan Love can opt to bet on himself and wait for Trevor Lawrence, Tua, and Dak to get their extensions before signing a contract extension, or he could opt to sign it immediately and be paid within the top 6 QBs in the NFL, thus saving the Green Bay Packers a lot of money to invest elsewhere and giving him a nice payday based off of how well he performed in his first season under center. I don't expect Jordan Love to come out and say,
"Hey, I want to be paid more money than Joe Burrow and Jared Goff."
I could possibly see him sneaking into the top 5 or the top 6, and when you consider the fact that the salary cap is rising, this puts the Green Bay Packers in a remarkable position, especially if they get this contract extension done quickly. Now here's where it gets complicated. What about Trevor Lawrence? Trevor Lawrence was considered to be the next coming of Patrick Mahomes, a can't miss prospect that could do everything. He was mobile, he had a lightning quick release, he was accurate, he could throw the ball anywhere, and his rookie season was full of turbulence. I mean, he had Urban Meyer as a head coach who cared more about grinding on co-eds and kicking his kickers than actually putting forth a masterful game plan to prepare Trevor Lawrence. But in year 2, they decided to hire Doug Peterson, and we saw Trevor Lawrence take the next step. Throwing over 4,000 passing yards, had a 66.3% completion percentage, 25 touchdowns, single-digit interceptions, and completed one of the most satisfying comebacks in NFL history to knock out the LA Chargers in the playoffs. So Trevor Lawrence was expected to take the next step in 2023. Unfortunately, he didn't really do that. He took a huge step back. 21 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, still threw over 4,000 passing yards, and he was dealing with an injury all season long. My personal issue with the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence is the fact that it always seems like the Jaguars put the most above average wide receiver talent around him. That's no knock against Calvin Ridley or Zay Jones or Evan Ingram, but none of those players really crack the top 5 in their position. Hell, even the top 8. So I don't know if Trevor Lawrence's problems start with Trent Baalke, who historically doesn't have the greatest track record as a general manager, or if it's Trevor Lawrence himself. I'm sure you've seen those famous memes of Trevor Lawrence being compared to Gardner Minshew, at least statistically. He currently has 1 Pro Bowl appearance, 1 playoff loss, 2 out of his 3 seasons have been fairly disappointing, so it's very difficult to know how much Trevor Lawrence should get paid. I don't think the Jaguars are going to pay him this offseason, but if they could get a contract done with him this offseason, that would obviously work to their benefit. At the end of the day, I expect an extension for Trevor Lawrence next offseason, and I'm speculating that he's going to have one of his best seasons to date this year. It's a make or break season for Trevor. He's probably going to break the bank after proving why he was such a highly touted prospect in the 2021 NFL draft. And this brings us to Tua Tagovailoa, which is one of the most complicated situations in the entire NFL. Some Miami Dolphin fans think that Tua is an MVP caliber talent, and his statistics certainly suggest that. The moment Mike McDaniel became his head coach, Tua exploded, building an all-world supporting cast around him both offensively and defensively. In his first season, Tua threw for over 3,500 passing yards in 13 games played despite the injuries he sustained. He also threw for 25 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. This past year, he had almost a 70% completion percentage and threw for over 4,600 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions. The Miami Dolphins were known as the Dallas Cowboys of the AFC because they were really good at beating up really bad teams, but were never able to take on those really good teams. They would drop 70 points on the Denver Broncos, but they would inevitably lose to the Kansas City Chiefs both times when they faced off against them throughout the year. Now, historically, I've always said that if you can't build a contender around your QB on a rookie scale contract, then you definitely have a right to have some reservations in regards to handing him a max contract. In the case of Tua, if Jared Goff is getting paid $53 million a year annually, and his fellow classmate Joe Burrow got paid $55 million a year annually, you could expect Tua to come in at $54 million a year, or even potentially break Joe Burrow's contract depending on how much the salary cap goes up. I expect Tua's contract to get done within the next couple of months. Chris Greer even said that they're planning on signing Tua to a contract extension. That number is probably going to be significantly more inflated as a result of Jared Goff. And then, of course, there is the man that is going to destroy NFL quarterback contracts. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Brock Purdy gets $60 million a year annually by the time his contract expires. You're talking about Mr. Irrelevant here. You have this man on the cheapest quarterback contract in the entire NFL from the very beginning of his career. This man was able to lead you to an NFC championship and a Super Bowl in both of his years starting. There's no question about it. It doesn't matter how you feel about Brock Purdy as a quarterback. I personally hate him because he always destroys my favorite team, but I love the story. But this past year, he threw for over 4,200 passing yards, 69.4% completion percentage, 31 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, finished in top 5 in MVP voting. There's just no question about it. This man is going to completely break the bank once he is eligible for a contract extension. And to be honest, it's well deserved. Jared Goff is a huge reason why this is going to happen, but at the end of the day, I felt like this was going to happen from the very beginning. Brock Purdy is going to break the bank the moment he hits free agency, barring something crazy this season or next season. As a matter of fact, it's in the San Francisco 49ers' best interest to try to extend this guy as soon as possible. The sooner you do it, the more of a chance you have of people beating that contract, and the more digestible the cap hit's going to be, depending on if the salary cap continues to increase. So let me know in the comment section down below. If you're a Lions fan, how do you feel about Jared Goff's contract? Do you really believe he could be the guy that gets you to the promised land? Do you like the value of his contract? Do you think $53 million a year is too much? I'd like to hear what you have to say. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.